Trump transition, big changes to his team. Papal politics. Pope Francis refuses to pass judgment on the American election. The Holy Father seeks forgiveness. Why he asks poor and homeless people to pardon Christians. And honoring Veterans Day. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, November 11th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President-elect Donald Trump is working on plans to govern. Trump tells the Wall Street Journal he's willing to keep parts of Obamacare after President Obama asked him to reconsider repealing it. Trump said he favors part of the law that allows people to keep their coverage despite pre-existing conditions, and he likes the provision that allows children to stay on their parents' health plans longer. He's also shaking up his transition team. Vice President-elect Mike Pence is now leading that team. Trump released a statement saying Pence would build on the initial work done by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Now, the group is identifying people for top White House jobs, cabinet posts, and 4,000 political appointees. As Donald Trump is getting ready to say you're hired, he's also commenting on protesters and the task at hand. Busy day planned in New York. We'll soon be making some very important decisions on people who will be running our government. After rumors that she would be leaving, Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway says she's been offered a White House job, but she won't say which one.
That's between President-elect Trump and me at the moment. And to be frank with you, I'm not that focused on me. This is Donald Trump's presidency. It's the government he needs to form. And I just think the criteria are very obvious. He needs people around him who are qualified, capable of doing the job, and also people who are loyal to him.
Trump's feud with President Obama has turned a corner after visiting the White House yesterday. Trump tweeted, "A fantastic day in D.C. Met with President Obama for the first time. Really good meeting. Great chemistry. Melania liked Mrs. O a lot." And a White House photograph shows Melania Trump's meeting with First Lady Michelle Obama. They discussed raising kids in the White House and toured the executive residence. Bill Clinton called to congratulate Donald Trump, according to a Clinton aide, and the two traded sharp barbs during that campaign. Police are cracking down on protesters who are still angry about Trump's election.
Protesters, this is an unlawful assembly. You must...
Officers fired rubber bullets to disperse protesters in Portland who wouldn't leave at one point. 4,000 people surged into the downtown area chanting, "We reject the president-elect." Trump responded saying protests were very unfair and incited by the media. Overall stock prices have jumped following election results. Investor Warren Buffett calls the anti-Trump doomsday Wall Street predictions foolish.
Do you feel optimistic about America right now?
100%.
A divided America?
100%.
Why?
It is this is a fantastic country. Stock market will be and higher 10, 20, 30 years from now. And it would have been with Hillary, and it would have been and will be with Trump.
So all of these predictions that the market was going to tank under President Trump?
They're silly.
Silly?
They're silly.
In an interview with an Italian newspaper, Pope Francis declined to comment on the U.S. election, saying he's not judging individual politicians. He said his main concern is for refugees and immigrants. Pope Francis prays with underprivileged people gathered at the Vatican for the Jubilee of Mercy for the homeless, poor, and socially excluded. 4,000 people are attending the weekend event that started today in the Paul VI Hall. Pope Francis asked them to pardon Christians who turn away from the poor instead of helping them. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Iraqi troops continue to advance in Mosul. They're trying to push ISIS out of Iraq's second largest city. The United Nations says it has fresh evidence the terrorists have used chemical weapons. President Obama gave his last Veterans Day address at Arlington National Cemetery. His message was one of unity after this divisive election year.
But the American instinct has never been to find isolation in opposite corners. It is to find strength in our common creed, to forge unity from our great diversity, to sustain that strength and unity even when it is hard.
And the president says whenever the world makes you cynical, whenever you doubt that courage and goodness and selflessness is possible, then stop and look to a veteran. Washington, D.C. welcomes veterans from across the country, and Wyatt Goolsbee says they're reflecting on their service and honoring others who serve in the military.
Crowds packed memorials for veterans in Washington, D.C., as young and old spent the holiday reflecting on all who have served in the military.
We can't lose sight of where we've been and where we're going, and this is a way to honor those who most paid the ultimate sacrifice for us to be where we are today. I'm sorry.
Vietnam veteran James Elliott says it's an honor to visit the nation's capital with his father-in-law, Leo Wren. Wren served in the Pacific Theater during World War II.
They make war seem romantic. There's nothing in it. It's horrible, miserable.
Wren says most of the men he bunked with in the Army Air Corps didn't make it back. He says he's thankful he's alive and can spend time with his family. Here at the National World War II Memorial, veterans and their families come from across the nation to mark this day. All branches of the military are represented, and you can tell there's a real sense of camaraderie between them, especially on a day like today.
It's like a special club that we've all joined. And from a World War II vet to an Afghan or Iraqi vet, they're brothers and sisters. So you might not know them, but once you find out about their service, you ask a few questions and you have a new lifelong friend.
Robert Wilkins, a retired Air Force vet, says he traveled to some 40 countries as a congressional liaison, which means he helped escort numerous American officials. He hopes respect for veterans is passed on to younger generations.
Less than 1% of our country currently serves. And to enjoy the freedoms that we have, it takes somebody to stand up and say, I'll do it.
And Wilkins says for all those who have or are serving, we as Americans say, thank you. In Washington, Wyatt Goolsbee, EWTN News Nightly.
Veterans Day coincides with Armistice Day, which marks the end of World War I. French President François Hollande took part in a remembrance ceremony on Paris's Champs-Élysées Avenue. This marks 98 years since the Allies won the Great War, which killed millions of people, including more than 1 million French lives. Donald Trump's victory shocked the media, who had been predicting a Clinton win. On Election Day, the Huffington Post forecast a 98% chance of Clinton being elected. And the New York Times put her chances at 85%. Pundits and media tweeted their mea culpas. NBC senior political editor Mark Murray said, "Everything I thought I knew about presidential races turned out to be incorrect. The polls, the parties, turnout." Pundit Chris Cillizza, "The truth is none of us know as much as we publicly purport to." Amy Walter, national editor of the Cook Political Report, "I got this election wrong." Joining me now is Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill. What an election, Joe.
Most shocking thing I've seen, Lauren, since Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson in Japan in 1990.
Okay, I didn't see that. How about since he bit off someone's ear? All right, that's a different story. You know, the media is widely seen to have such a liberal bias. You and I both know that. Is that what happened here? Was this the media's desire for Clinton to be president and Trump not to be president?
The numbers support that question, Lauren, in that USA Today did a poll a week before the election, and it asked, who do you think the media is rooting for? Two Americans, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? And by a 10-to-1 margin, they came back with Hillary. But here was the interesting part. A majority of Clinton supporters said that they thought the media was biased against Donald Trump. So everybody saw the pylon, certainly.
Right.
And they missed the story, which was the feeling going out throughout the country, these basket of deplorables that everybody demonized but no one talked to.
You know, also we saw a lot of fake news on social media, fake news sites, and then we had Donna Brazile leaking debate questions to the completely wrong analysis on this Clinton victory. So I know the answer to this question, but I just have to have you I have to have you say it. Did the media learn anything from this election?
Oh, they learned plenty. They learned not to share stories in advance, like we saw Politico reporters do on 3 separate occasions. They learned not to engage in quote approval. Hey, is this quote work? How about this one? Veto power. They learn probably not to go to John Podesta saying, hey, I'm about to interview Donald Trump. What question should I ask him?
Thank you, John Harwood from
John Harwood,
CNBC, right?
But they're not gonna learn anything. They're not gonna actually act on it because profits were so great for all these media companies that when the money comes in, you don't learn any lessons because there's no accountability because no one wanted to rock the boat. They just want to keep filling the coffers. So if that makes sense, yeah, they learn, but it won't matter because they profited from it.
Right. Trump's victory is really viewed as an anti-establishment vote. But, you know, it's also an anti-media vote, isn't it? I mean, Trump cannot stand us. He hates the media, and the media, usually there's this honeymoon period with the president-elect. We're not seeing that at all. They are still have their guns pointed right at Donald Trump.
Oh, God, yeah. When Donald Trump talked about a rigged system, he included the media in that, and he tied the two together. He said, look, government's rigged, but the media is rigged also because they're working with Democrats, and that's the rigged part of all of this.
Right, of course. You know, and we also have to see how this is going to shape out. There's been a press pool that is assigned to Donald Trump, and there has not been a lot of communication between that temporary press pool, and the Trump administration.
Yeah, he's bypassed the press for the last couple of months now, going through Twitter, going through Republican sites, friendly sites, and he's saying basically, I don't need you, all right? I don't need the filter. I'm going to go right to the people. You could agree or disagree with that. Press is screaming, this is tradition. You can't do that. Trump's saying, tradition's dead.
Yeah, that's right. And it's now my way, and I'm going to tweet out, and you're going to run it. There you go. All right, Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill, thank you so much for joining us.
Great seeing you.
Coming up, a more accurate way to predict elections, how researchers are tapping into people's feelings. And a new book about Pope Francis tells us what he finds special about grandmothers. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. A Chicago company used social media analytics to predict the outcome of the election. They came pretty close, predicting a potential electoral tie of 269 to 269. That's a lot closer than mainstream media polls. Joining me now is Jaime Brugueras, head of analytics for Networked Insights. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
The polling was a disaster this election. How is your method different from traditional polls? How did you guys get it almost right?
It's very simple. It uses social data. So it's not relying on calling people on the phone in the middle of the night, asking them who they're going to vote for. It's relying on people who have gone on Twitter and Facebook and all the commenting places and put their opinions online. And we've gone and analyzed that information, cleaned it up, run it through a statistical model to come up with what we saw.
Sure. So Jaime, would you see a lot of differences based on the news cycle? For example, when the Access Hollywood tapes came out or Clinton's leaked emails were released? And how did you factor sort of that information into your analysis?
Yeah, we saw huge swings all across throughout after every debate, after the tapes were released, after any big news or event, we saw huge swing one way and the other. And the way we capture that information is by going after what emotions were people expressing online.
So this is feelings, Jaime. So you were actually really tapping into feelings. This just wasn't people answering on the phone saying, yes, I think I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton.
Yes. Were they angry? Were they satisfied, not satisfied? Did they love a candidate? Did they have a desire to vote for him? So we looked at all those expressions that people use to express those emotions and then quantify them across every state.
Why wasn't this information in the mainstream media? Because I think this is exactly what would have been able to have pollsters and journalists understand the hidden Donald Trump vote. And do you plan on doing that in the future?
It's new. That's why nobody kind of was using it. People have tried to use social media is falling short because they just count how many people talked about Donald Trump or how many people talked about Hillary. And so by looking at the emotions, it's definitely something new. Are we going to do it again? Definitely.
How do you think this is going to change campaign strategy in the future?
It's just going to be a very valuable voter intelligence data set that needs to be looked at.
Thank you so much, Jaime Brugueras, Head of Analytics for Networked Insights, and you're in Chicago. Thanks again.
Thank you.
A new book launched this week about Pope Francis. It reveals him as a pastor close to his flock. It's called My Word is in Your Eyes, and the Jesuit priest who wrote it says that's the key to understanding the Holy Father.
I felt energized talking with him. And the surprise is to find that a pastor who is really close to the people. So reading these words, you can understand his way of dealing with people, his way of building bridges with many kinds of people, religious people, but also politicians.
Yesterday, I spoke with Rome bureau chief for the Catholic News Agency, Alan Holdren, about this new book. Alan Holdren is the Rome bureau chief for Catholic News Agency. He joins us now from Rome. Alan, what are new things that you're learning about this Pope Francis book?
Well, Lauren, this book starts off with an interview with Pope Francis by the author, which he speaks extensively about his homilies. He says how they're prepared, but also how he likes them to be and how he likes to deliver them. He said he doesn't like anything between himself and the people he's speaking to. He doesn't like to write out a complete text of what he's going to say. He thinks about it from the day before, he runs through it, he uses anecdotes from his life, and he applies them to what he's going to say that next day here in the morning mass in the residence that he lives in now. And then when he delivers it, he looks people directly in the eyes. And that's the title of this book, which is My Words in Your Eyes. He said that even when he's in a large crowd of people celebrating Mass even for millions, he likes to look people directly in the eyes to create this feeling of contact and of warmth.
You know, how much did his time in Buenos Aires shape his papacy, in your opinion?
Well, he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires for 15 years before he was elected Pope. You can imagine that in his trajectory from the very beginning, being ordained a priest, becoming a teacher, also becoming the Jesuit provincial, which is the head of the local Jesuits for years, he built up all of this experience. Then if you could choose any one thing to prepare you to be a pope, I would imagine that it would be being an archbishop, being the head of a large diocese. And Buenos Aires has more than 3 million inhabitants. He was known there for being a very decisive administrator and governor, standing up for the church in public very decisively, very strongly, but also being very close to the people, which I think we see that very clearly also in his pontificate here in Rome.
One of the lighter moments in the book, he talks about special love for grandmothers. Tell us about that.
Well, he says that when he's in the Pope Mobile and he's going through St. Peter's Square and he's greeting people, blessing people, he says when he sees a feisty old woman, he says they have a look in their eyes and he speaks to them through their eyes, he said. He likes to get off the Pope Mobile and go down and greet them.
Alan Holdren, thank you so much for your report today. Alan Holdren is our Rome bureau chief for the Catholic News Agency.
Thank you, Lauren.
Up next, Christmas coffee changes. We'll tell you about Starbucks and the manger. And the beauty of faith, how St. Martin of Tours is reflected in art. Pope Francis says Christian love is the incarnation of the Word. His daily homily warns against worldly love, which does not recognize that Jesus came in the flesh. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. For commercial businesses, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Last year, Starbucks was roundly criticized for portraying secular images on its coffee cups. No more. The company revealed one of its images this year will be of the Nativity. Today, we celebrate the feast day for St. Martin of Tours. Earlier this week, I talked to the author of Beauty of Faith. Dr. Jem Sullivan joins us now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lauren.
We're going to talk about St. Martin of Tours, a really interesting fellow, a soldier who then ultimately came to Christ.
That's right. You know, St. Martin of Tours lived in the 4th century. He's known as a patron of soldiers, which is so fitting that we celebrate his feast day today on Veterans Day. He was a soldier in the army of Constantine the Great. And this scene in this beautiful painting from the National Gallery really captures a moment from a legend that he was known for, in which Martin encounters a beggar at the city gates. And he is moved with pity and immediately cuts his cloak in half and gives half his cloak to this beggar to warm him against the winter cold.
And the painting shows this bright red cloak, and it is a very vibrant painting. And if we move on to the El Greco painting,
yes,
that is where we see his cloak in green and, of course, in the El Greco style.
Exactly. You know, the 16th century artist known as El Greco was really a master of sacred and religious painting. And he gives us his vision of this same legend of St. Martin in this beautiful painting that really has kind of an ethereal, otherworldly quality that is so typical of El Greco's style of painting.
And he looks emaciated almost, the beggar does.
Exactly. Notice the large scale of both the horse and St. Martin, but then the beggar is emaciated, but he's elongated. His form is elongated. And this is telling us something that the story doesn't end there with Martin giving his cloak to the beggar. In fact, what happens is soon after, Martin has a vision in which Christ comes to him dressed in the same cloak that he gave the beggar. And Jesus says to him, "What you did for that poor man, you did for me." And so really, you know, it's one of the corporal works of mercy to clothe the naked. And the saints, like Martin, had a special love for the poor. So perhaps this emaciated, elongated figure in the painting is in fact Christ. In the distressing disguise of the poor.
Of course. Now you have a special program airing on Friday on EWTN. Tell us about that and how that came about and what we can expect from it.
Yes, this is The Beauty of Faith. It's a special today, Friday, at 10 p.m. And it really is because beauty is a path to God. Beauty is a path to God. And so we're inviting viewers to come on a pilgrimage of beauty to discover how the church's faith, how our faith has been translated into sacred art, sacred architecture, music, poetry, literature.
What will you be spanning? What years?
You know, really we're looking at the 2,000-year tradition of the art in terms
you've
of
got a big job cut out for you there, 2,000 years.
Right, but it's really looking at it in terms of what is beauty? What is beauty from the Catholic perspective? And how can we recover the sense of beauty and the arts in the church's life, in the liturgy, in our families, in the raising of children, in education, in preaching, teaching, evangelization, because in fact God is the source of all beauty. And so to travel that path, to make this pilgrimage of beauty, is to encounter the Lord.
Wonderful. Well, we're looking forward to seeing this program. It airs Friday at 10 p.m. right here on EWTN. Dr. Jem Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren.
Well, that does it for us. For the EWTN News Nightly team in Washington, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And follow me on Twitter at Lauren Ashburn. And that's all for news from a Catholic perspective. Enjoy your weekend. Good night. And God bless. We leave you with images celebrating Veterans Day.